Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Live Chat with James, coming to you from the studios back here in beautiful Metro Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. We have a big show tonight. We're going to be talking about various headlines that, of course, are important not only to Canadians but also to viewers from around the globe. We're going to cover the Air India incident, in which it was the worst terrorist activity or attack in Canadian history. That, of course, coming up with the anniversary on June the 23rd. With that said, we're also going to take a look at why Trump went running from the G7 summit, and although he used Iran as an excuse, it obviously was other issues involved, including the fact that he didn't have the balls to stand up and face the world leaders of the G7 summit when they needed to address a lot of urgent issues with the President of the United States. He ran away like a scared schoolchild. We're also going to take a look at the destruction of Palestine. We're also going to take a look at the destruction of Palestinians throughout the region. Now, we will also visit a UN report that has come out that has stated We'll discuss that along with a major bust that happened in the Peel region by the Peel Regional Police in partnership with the Toronto Police Service, as well as provincial and federal law enforcement and other agencies. We're also going to take a look at the CSIS report. 2024 CSIS report is out, and what does that mean for Canadian security? We will take a look at the fact that Mark Carney has made some major announcements about U.S. tariffs and countering those tariffs, as at the same time protecting the jobs and the industry within the steel and aluminum fields or industries. We'll also take a look at a major advancement in artificial intelligence and media use when it comes to the early detection of the H5N1, also known as the bird flu and avian influenza. So we'll take a quick peek at that. Also, we'll bring some tips to you as the wildfire season is well going throughout Canada. We'll bring a few tips and things you should keep in mind if taking a road trip anywhere across the country this summer as the weather heats up and the kids are out of school soon. Don't forget also that in the nature and backcountry that brings with it inherent risks, including rock slides. We'll talk about a rock slide today in Banff, Alberta, where one person has been killed and others were airlifted or ground transported to local hospitals. And finally, we will talk about the $4 billion that's been committed, just over $4 billion once again committed to Ukraine and their security at the G7 summit. So those are the topics that we'll discuss tonight. So let's jump right in. June the 23rd marks a very somber anniversary in Canada. The lives of hundreds of people that were lost on the Air Canada flight on the 40th anniversary. And that means that some wounds are pulled open again as people remember the victims of that tragedy. As that comes to light, it's also a matter of debate and all sides of the argument about whether or not there should be a further investigation into the Air India bombing, but it should also be noted that the RCMP still consider that an open case and still are actively working on the investigation. Again, 40 years later, and nobody has really been sentenced for those deaths that happened so tragically over the ocean. Once again, the anniversary will be June the 23rd. We'll bring you more information on that, as well as some reports from the Air India Memorial at Vancouver's Stanley Park. Trump, for the final swan song of his lack of commitment to working with the world to negotiate some type of trade and some type of forward-moving pattern when it comes to finding solutions to his tariff policies and his trade war. He did arrive at the summit in Kananaskis, Alberta, and he was there for all of part of a day. Although he was scheduled to be there for several days, he basically used the Iran attacks by Israel as an excuse to have to depart early. He had stated, excuse me, he had stated that he would be staying for the dinner and then flying out afterwards, but instead decided to just ditch the event and leave even earlier than that. And a lot of people are speculating that it had a lot to do with the fact that he was not, he didn't have the balls to sit down and face the world leaders and talk about the issues that are of utmost importance. Now, there was also a signing of a declaration for a ceasefire and some concessions to be had when it comes to the Iran, Israel, and Palestine issues in the crisis going on in the Middle East, which Trump was the only world leader that was going to opt out of signing. He refused to sign it. The question is, why is Trump putting off really any public, we'll say public call out for peace in the Middle East? We know that he has deep relations with Narendra Modi. We know that he wants to build a big resort in Gaza. We know that he is the most corrupt and dishonest world leader that we've ever seen in the United States. So the real question is, what is his end game? What is he looking to get out of it for his personal self? As opposed to what's right for all of the people who are losing lives in this war. With that said, the United Nations has come out with their reports showing that, again, for the third year in a row, the number of children victimized in a war that is increasing year over year, 3 years in a row, and again, 2024 was the worst year out of those. With that said, we're talking about children who are killed in attacks. We're talking about children who are starving to death. We are talking about different aid that is being diverted from children's organizations to assist when it comes to health, safety, medication treatments. Just so much more. And this is disgusting when you look at it in the tens of thousands of children that have been impacted by the wars, not only in Israel, not only in Palestine and Iran, but also when it comes to the war in Ukraine and other different crises around the world. Now, this should be alarming at a time that we should be looking at world leaders and insisting that they follow the rule of law when it comes to war. We know that war is ugly. War is never pretty, and it's not supposed to be. But at the same time, the destruction of schools, of hospitals, of religious facilities, and of cultural monuments and locations of historic significance, those are supposed to be off the table. They should be targeting military infrastructure and military bases. They shouldn't be going after facilities in which house children and families and innocent civilians. That is just wrong. And to see those numbers up in the tens of thousands of children who again are victimized by war is just disgusting. We do have a full article on our Substack account that you're welcome to read. We have several actually that have been released today, so by all means check that out. It tells you a lot more detail about the UN reports and about the attacks on the different infrastructure, as well as, of course, schools and the children starving, being killed, and being just harmed for life in so many different ways. And with that said, we'll move forward past that. And the India arriving at the G Summit earlier this week was a big story in Canada. Of course, there was a lot of cries of protest when it came to the Canadian Sikh community. Now, of course, we know that there's been transnational repression, foreign interference, and of course, even the human rights abuses at the hands of the India government within India, and specifically the Punjab region. Now, although it is the big noise coming from the Sikh community, it also impacts the Muslims, the Dalits, the Christians, and others that speak out against the Modi government. For those who are still in India, you know, and then when it comes to the transnational repression, of course, Now there were some interesting developments with the G7, because Mark Carney, apparently, according to his own statements and others in the know, claim that Narendra Modi has been told that if we are going to move on a path of repairing the relationship between Canada and India, that it has to start with the transnational repression investigations by the RCMP and other law enforcement agencies. It did come out that allegedly the RCMP are in communication with counterparts in India, which is a big step forward. It should also be noted, though, that in questioning several politicians prior to Modi's arrival, they referred to acts of transnational repression and murders, pluralized. They were talking about more than just one murder. So that's something that we're going to be keeping a close eye on, because, of course, we are well aware that we've just passed the 2-year anniversary of the cold and callous assassination of Hardeep Singh Nijjar at the Gurdwara parking lot in Surrey, British Columbia. So once again, we will keep a close eye on that and try to get more information about what other murders they may be referencing, as we can suspect several, but again, we'll see what they say. When it comes to the CSIS report, though, there is a new report out by the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, and that has just been released. I have not had a chance to review it. I do now have a copy of that report, but again, I have not had a chance to review it with any time or in any depth. So again, we'll take a look at that in further detail in different shows throughout the next several days. It should be noted, though, that as we were talking about India, transnational repression, foreign interference, and also their human rights abuses within their own country, it's interesting that the Lawrence Bishnoi gang and other criminal outfits have popped up in the CSIS report, and that report allegedly makes a direct correlation between these criminal activity or criminal organized crime groups and the Modi government. So again, we'll bring more of that in the coming days, as confiscated as well as a part of the asset seizures. Now, why that is significant is because there has been a lot of violence and other activity within the tow truck industry in Ontario. And with this gang activity and 18 of those trucks being taken off the road, that will hopefully quiet down some of that violence that was plaguing the tow industry in that region. Taking that further, though, they also found guns, bulletproof vests, 500 and some odd rounds of ammunition, over $40,000 cash, and some high-end sports cars and supercars as well. Now, these are individuals who are some known to the police and the courts, as about 40% of those arrested were out on bail. They were out on different conditions, in which, of course, they've now been charged with these new offenses, including new charges of not following the conditions set out in the conditional release or the bail conditions. So we'll watch and see how that plays out. We will bring you more details on that in the coming days as well. But why I brought that up is because it is significant, in many ways. First of all, the South Asian community across Canada has been the target of an unrelenting circle and ring of extortion, not only attempts, but we suspect many successful extortion activities. Now, if you have been extorted, or you are the victim of an attempted extortion, or currently being extorted, by all means contact the Peel Regional Police if you are in the Brampton or the Peel region in Ontario, the Toronto Police Service if you're in the city of Toronto. the Vancouver Police in Vancouver, Surrey Police Service if you're in Surrey, and so forth. But definitely reach out and get help. They are very much involved in the investigation and trying to crack down on these extortion rings. Now, the Lawrence Bishnoi gang, as I said, is very interesting because they are being run by Lawrence Bishnoi himself, who is in custody, in jail in India, and yet he has the ability to run his international crime organization from a jail cell. The CSIS report, as stated, does have some links and claims that the Bishnoi gang is much more in tune and in cahoots with the government of India than we previously suspected. So again, we'll go into that in a bit more detail. As that happens, though, the Canadian government is being asked by David Eby, the Premier of British Columbia, to be labeled a terrorist organization. The reason why this is significant is because, A, it is almost unheard of that the Canadian government labels a criminal organization as a terrorist organization. So that in itself is very unique and almost unprecedented. And when you take into account the reasoning behind it, it brings a lot more authority and a lot more resources behind the crackdown on this criminal organization. It gives broader reach in order to seize assets, not only of those involved directly with the Bishnoi gang, but also anybody who is contributing to the benefit of a terrorist organization. It further enhances the charges that can be placed against individuals who are participating in criminality at the behest of Lawrence Bishnoi or his other leaders within the Bishnoi gang. It will also give further power and resources to the police and the prosecution to not only prosecute individuals who are directly involved, but those who support the business activities, whether they think they are legitimate or not. It is funneling proceeds to a terrorist element. Take that into account along with the extended prison sentences with those different charges attached to it. And it not only will crack down, hopefully, on some of that gang activity, but also be able to be used as a negotiating chip for the Crown prosecutors and investigators if they are able to use these enhanced charges and reduction thereof when they do catch some of the lower fish in the pond. Then they may be able to use that to flip them, as they say, to turn them into snitches and get them to give up more information on the hierarchy and the operating the processes of the Bishnoi gang. It also allows the Canadian law enforcement further authority to work with other agencies, criminal investigation and law enforcement in other countries. So again, it just really broadens the tools and the resources available to battle this organized crime group. But again, with this big arrest, and they do expect a lot more arrests to be coming out of the Peel region, and hopefully that will put a big dent in the extortion and violence against the South Asian community in that area and across the country. We'll have to watch and see how that plays out. As we continue on, we were talking about Mark Carney and the G7 summit. Of course, one of the big issues that we anticipated being spoken about at the G7 would have been the steel and aluminum industry. Canada is, of course, looking at more tariffs at the hands of the United States and Donald Trump. He seems to be quite happy to continue with tariffs. There has been a deadline set of 30 days that from the date that it was announced, so about 28 days now, for Canada and the US to come to a trade agreement and deal with the tariffs that Trump has levied. With that said, Trump seems to be happy to keep blanket 10% tariffs across the board when it comes to Canadian goods, but also he's looking at other tariffs as well. He says he likes tariffs. They're easy, they're simple, they're quick. Kind of like him, I guess, just simple, and yeah, that's about it. I'll leave it at that when it comes to him. But again, he fled the G7 summit like a scared little schoolgirl. And one of the topics was the steel and aluminum trade or industry. So it's nice to see that the Canadian government has announced very clearly that they will be bringing measures in to help support the jobs, the employers, and the industry as a whole to get through this time of tariffs and uncertainty dealing with the United States. This also includes the major transition of spending in the Canadian military as we look to increase the spending to hit the 2% target set by NATO by the end of 2025. A lot of the procurement of steel for any of the military applications and manufacturing is going to be sourced from Canadian steel manufacturers and companies or different service suppliers or product suppliers that don't have tariffs from their countries and ones that we already have agreements or working partnerships with. So again, it's going to be a huge hit for the American steel and aluminum industry. It's still a big hit for the Canadian industry, but there are some plans in place to try and assist the industry to get through this time of unease. With that said, Mark Carney has also announced that there may be other tariffs that will be brought in, reciprocal tariffs, to address the imbalance and the unfair, illegal, and irrational tariffs as it was put by Melanie Joly. Yeah, these tariffs need to go, but again, Trump seems to like them and doesn't like the complication of dealing with tariffs and dealing with trade deficits to actually come to some type of an agreement. Again, apparently his brain can't handle anything more complicated than a tariff that he doesn't even understand himself how that works. So once again, yeah, and as I said, he ran away from the G7, and we were expecting big announcements from Donald Trump in the following hours and the following day, and right up to the next 48 hours. But instead, all that we were hearing about is his big, beautiful flags that he's planting at the White House. Of course, he's talking about these big, beautiful American flags and the flagpoles that they're tapered and they're beautiful and you've never seen anything. They're the best in the world. And of course, they're made with Canadian steel and, foreign flag, foreign, it's all foreign materials that were used to make his big, beautiful flagpoles and flags and get them all set up. And that seemed to be his big thing, was talking about these flags. He goes on just like a crazy man about these flags, how beautiful they are, and like he's never seen one before in his life. And the flagpoles are tapered and they're beautiful at the top. And oh my God, it's just ridiculous. But instead of actually dealing with real issues, he is just putting the most ridiculous things online again, going on about his flagpoles and the raising of the flagpoles. And then, yeah, just go. Oh, I don't even want to refer you to check out his tweets and his truth posts because it's just ridiculous. But with that said, he's also really pushing the different government agencies and different government sites to announce the Truth Social, to encourage people to get onto Truth Social, to encourage subscribers and all of this. And yet it is a private Trump organization or a Trump business. And again, just trying to really push people towards using Trump services, kind of like his new ridiculous Trump phones that are made in China and piggyback off of other major networks in the US. So again, you're not getting the American-made phone that he's promoting it as. you are not getting the best and the biggest service available because it's just piggybacking off of other networks and other cellular phone providers at a much higher price. So again, just another grift by the great grifter of the US. When we take a look at that, though, you should also be aware that he has been going on about Israel, about Iran, and just really all over the place with no real direction. He's like a blind man in a whorehouse. He just has no direction at all. He has no plan by the looks of it, and he has several different people under him that have differences of opinions when it comes to plan. And then you have, of course, the secretary, Mr. Hegseth, who just stands back and is really handing off the Iran decisions and plans to people under him, other generals and such, where he doesn't even seem to know himself what the Pentagon is representing or recommending. So again, it's just another shit show in the White House, in the Pentagon, and in the U.S. as a whole. I apologize to all of our U.S. viewers. We're not focused on you directly. We're just talking about, unfortunately, the administration that somebody might refer to as leadership. And unfortunately, you'll never hear that reference by me. Now, over the summer, folks, let's move on to other subjects. Over the summer, of course, people will be taking road trips. People are moving. People are just having a good time. Well, all right, maybe the moving is not a good time. But just some tips and tricks to ensure that you remain a bit safer on your journeys. We know that, of course, wildfire season is also upon us, and across Canada, we have wildfires raging across the prairies. We have wildfires in British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, Quebec, pretty much every region of the country, whether it's provincial or territorial, we have a lot of wildfires burning. So therefore, if you are planning a road trip to discover the amazing national parks or even provincial and regional parks throughout the country, if you are packing up and moving to a new city, if you are just out going out for a cruise through wine country, some things to keep in mind is that you want to ensure that you have no less than a half a tank of fuel. So instead of getting down to a quarter or less of a tank, you want to stop and fuel up more frequently to ensure that you stay above that half tank mark. And a part of that is because there can be very extensive road closures. They can be detours where the fuel stations are not where you thought they would be for the simple fact that you're not on your scheduled route. And some of the back roads that you get rerouted on are just long and tough, and you can also hit major delays where you're sitting on the side of the road. You want to keep the air conditioning going, or other reasons to keep your vehicle running. So again, you want to make sure that you are prepared for that. With that said, of course, when you're in the summer heat and you get delayed on the roadside, you want to make sure that you have an emergency supply of snacks. Try to get things that are not as high in sugar, but more protein and a bit more healthy in terms of the snack end. And keep those in your vehicle for the road trip, because again, if you get stopped, you can be delayed for many, many hours without the ability to get snacks or water. So you want to make sure that you have a good amount of water in your vehicle, bottles of water for everybody that's with you. Don't forget, if you have pets, you want to make sure that you have water for them and some snacks and food for them as well. Once again, with the unpredictability of wildfires and road closures, we just try to remind you that you want to stay safe. You want to keep your phone charged. You want to have a portable radio if you can, just in case for some reason you have to turn your car off. Of course, again, if you are driving an electric vehicle, make sure that you keep it charged as much as you can. Don't let the charge get too low, because again, if you are stopped on the side of the highway due to road closures, accidents, wildfires, anything like that, you want to make sure that you have the gas in your car, the diesel in your truck, and of course the electricity in your piece of crap Tesla. With that said, just make sure that you are prepared, and again, don't forget your animals. Keep a couple of blankets in the vehicle, even though you may be there in the summertime, especially if you're going into the mountains. It can cool down substantially over the evening hours. So again, if you're stuck at the side of the road in your vehicle for many, many hours, and you don't want to keep it running, then just make sure you have some blankets to keep comfortable and to take that chill off if you get stuck there in the evenings. Also, keep in mind that, of course, with that said, you want to have, something to read, something to occupy yourself, but also anybody else in the vehicle, especially if you have children. You want to have some games, board games, and such, because again, you may not be able to charge all the electronics at the same time. Tablets and laptops, all that. So again, just have some board games or maybe card games or such that are small and you can actually play in the car, or sit outside the vehicle if you do get stuck at the roadside for road closures or any other reason. Also make sure that you have, as I said, snacks and all of that, but also make sure that you have your medication with you. Even if you're just planning a day trip, it's always important to take that with you, because again, if there are road closures and such and you get stuck overnight, then it's always good to have your medications with you, even if you weren't needing them during what time you thought you'd be gone. Also make sure that if you are taking a road trip, if you're moving long distance or anything, that people know that you are on the road. And I'm not talking about social media. You don't want to announce to social media that you're away from home and have somebody burglarize it. But instead, make sure that a family member knows when you should be checking in, just in case, once again, you get stuck in a wildfire zone or an evacuation zone or a rock slide, anything like that. It's always good to make sure that you have someone that you can check in with, and just so that they know you're safe and they can notify authorities of your planned route and such if you don't make it. So if you're in a fire zone, then it just makes it a lot easier for first responders to have that information as well. Welcome, Dylan, to the conversation. We're just talking about summertime and road trips. But again, making sure that if you are going out into nature, if you are taking road trips and taking breaks to stretch the legs, that you use some common sense as well as caution. Keep in mind that the mountains and along the rivers can change at different times, whether it's rapid weather changes, whether it is temperature, whether it is just different conditions. Today, for example, there was a major rock slide in Banff National Park. Everybody saw how beautiful Kananaskis was right on the tip of Banff National Park just recently with the G7 there. Today, a different, totally different narrative when it came to the news coverage, as one person has been killed and several others were transported to hospital, some by air ambulance and some by ground ambulance. Unfortunately, the incident happened at the Beau Glacier and the Beau Glacier Falls as well. So within that region, they do believe that they have all of the victims evacuated from the scene. They believe that it was one who was killed by the rock slide, and as well others, undefined number of others that were transported to hospital in various levels of condition. So again, they believe they've got everybody, but they will be going back in to do more searches tomorrow just to confirm that is the case. With that said, so you want to use caution, you want to be aware, you want to be alert, and follow any of the directives and information, especially if you're going out in the backcountry. You can check out websites, the Parks Canada for national parks and other regional sites, just to check the conditions and such. So there could be, you could be going up a riverbed or a waterfall or something, and there could be a blockage that you could have been alerted to, but if you don't check, you don't know. If that blockage releases, then of course that's going to have a direct impact on everything downstream, including you and your group. So just use caution, use a bit of planning and common sense out there, folks. Yes, and as we were talking about that region and the G7 summit, Of course, another $4 billion was committed to Vladimir Zelensky, who showed up at the G7 summit on invitation. Now, part of that is in military aid and equipment, and part of that is, part of that is just through our commitments, and then another $2 billion is a loan that is secured by the assets that have been frozen, belonging to different Russian oligarchs and the Russian president and others. So again, different assets that have been seized through the throughout the war process here, again, are being used to offset some of the risk of the money going out to Ukraine. Now, a lot of people get upset and they think that it's just bags of cash going out the door to Ukraine when they say that there is, another $2 billion going to Ukraine. They don't mean just suitcases of cash. Essentially, how it works is that with the countries that are giving the aid, they are either supplying it through current assets and inventory. So whether that's munitions, whether that's tanks, whether that's drones, helicopters, and so forth, they are essentially transferring the ones that they already have. So, for example, here in Canada, so the Canadian military, they may be giving drones and helicopters that are in our supply chain, but also ones that may have been committed to purchase from other governments. So they are getting that equipment and all of that aid in the dollar valuation of it, but it's not just bags of cash. At the same time, it is also a win for Canadian manufacturers and suppliers because all of these items need to be replaced and replenished. And a lot of times it is a bit older of equipment or munitions and equipment. So again, it helps to not only replenish the Canadian supplies and equipment, but also update it. So there could be different technologies or different advancements since we made the purchase. So that again helps with our military readiness. It helps us to upgrade to a more modern utilization of that technology, whichever it may be. But it also helps us to fulfill our commitment to restock and bring our military into a new era. And so there are benefits to it that a lot of people don't see. Again, with the steel and aluminum industry taking such a major hit with the tariffs out of the United States, again, the increased spending to put us at the 2% GDP level by the end of the year will help to buy some of that steel and aluminum from our own industries within Canada and create or at least maintain a lot of those jobs, in addition to, of course, manufacturing of all of the made in Canada supplies that we can. So using that steel and aluminum for that. So again, there's a whole cycle that people don't foresee when they talk about the aid going to Ukraine. It actually has a major benefit to Canadians as well that Canadians a lot of times don't understand or don't realize. And I think that's a part of the confusion and the frustration when it comes to how that works. Keeping in mind that we do have a commitment of a 2% now spend of our GDP. We have had that for many years as we've had other levels of commitment with NATO and our other allied partners and relationships around the globe. So again, it is a part of our commitments as Canadians, as a part of the global community, and through the global partnerships in which we get a lot of return as well that people don't understand. They think that, we're just giving out all this money and we're not getting anything in return, but that's the farthest from the truth. We get increased trade, we get interrelationships, we get trade barriers that may be restrictive. We get certain exemptions or other trade partnerships where we're able to export or import, whereas there may be differences in different global relationships. It also helps our economic standing because when we are investing in other countries, such as the United States, we hold quite a bit of debt from the United States. They, in the form of different documents and different financial items. So again, that helps the U.S., but at the same time, it brings a revenue return to Canada. So that's, some of the things that we have to keep in mind is that there is a return on the investment, whether it's the G7, whether it is the NATO relationships, and so forth. When you look at NATO, for example, when you consider the amount of money that is spent by all of the NATO members, a good percentage, over 70% of that money was actually spent in the United States, buying from different U.S. contractors and suppliers. And that was representative of all of the spending coming from NATO members. So the amount of money that the U.S. is making from NATO is quite substantial. And that would be, of course, a good reason why Donald Trump wants to increase the commitment to 5% by all NATO members. It is not a bad idea, and I'm not saying that it is. What I am saying is that there is a massive benefit to the United States in the order of increased spending by NATO nations. However, I will add to that with the change in the reliability of the U.S. as a solid and trustworthy trade partner, that momentum is shifting. We're starting to see a lot more opportunities for Canadian manufacturers as well as European and British manufacturers as well. And when it comes to the current spend with the increase of the Canadian spending alone, we're talking billions and billions of dollars that will now be diverted to suppliers either in Canada or in Europe and Britain, as opposed to suppliers in the United States. So they are, no pun intended, but they are shooting themselves in the foot by losing trillions of dollars potentially in trade with foreign nations. This again also applies to tourism. For every 10% in tourism, it's estimated that the U.S. is losing $2 billion a month in the spending of tourists visiting the nation from Canada. And now that's not even taking into account the other nations that have taken it upon their citizens of their own, not by government influence, but by citizen power and social media contacts and such, to boycott travel to the U.S. So again, it's costing them billions of dollars a month. And again, it is, I hate to say it, but it is self-inflicted by the government of the day in the government that was elected in the United States. Unfortunately, a lot of people who did vote for Trump at the end of the day did anticipate him making a lot of radical changes within a very short period of time. But I think that a great number of those people anticipated or expected that he would follow laws, both of the United States and of the international community. I think that they felt he would take action on immigration while respecting the rule of law and the Constitution. So I think that a lot of people feel that they've been duped by the president in his election rhetoric and where it is actually happening, or in the manner in which it's happening, whether it goes to immigration, whether it goes to impacts on the economy, personal home budgets, as well as jobs, employment, tourism, and all of that. So I think that people are waking up to the fact that Donald Trump has screwed them, and he screwed the world economy at the same time. So again, it's going to be a very long road, I think, to rebuild the trust and the relationships that the U.S. once had to any level of normalcy. But I also don't believe that they will ever reach the levels in which they were just a few years ago. With that said, folks, thank you again for tuning in to another episode of Live Chat with James, again coming from the ProPix TV studios in British Columbia, Canada. Stay tuned tomorrow night as we will talk in depth about some new technology that is leading the way to earlier detection of the H5N1 avian influenza virus, as well as other technological advances that could help to not only have early detection, allowing for isolation and the reduced spread of the disease, but of course how that may actually be scaled to other parts of the agriculture industry and eventually into the wild species populations to help with disease recognition, detection, and of course allowing earlier intervention. So that'll be tomorrow. We'll also talk about the second anniversary that passed last week of the murder of Hardeep Singh Nijjar. And of course, as I stated, we will be exploring more about the CSIS report, the CSIS 2024 report, marking the 40th anniversary of the Canadian Security Intelligence Agency as it is CSIS. So again, thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, everyone. Again, if you have any comments or if you have story ideas, by all means, feel free to put them in the comment section or email them to Propics Canada, that's PROPICS Canada, at gmail.com. Take care, everyone. Stay safe, and thanks for tuning in.